Welcome everyone to this episode of Discourse, where today we will be reviewing Between Tomorrow and Yesterday, Tripping into Nowhere, Behind Nothing, by author Ivanye Yulosan.
Between Tomorrow and Yesterday is technically you get two books in one, which the author writes as two plays. The first one being a musical comedy based on the Scottish play by William Shakespeare, Macbeth, and the second part being By the By and By, a satire of the black theatrical expression that takes place in a small theater. In today's video, we're just going to focus on the musical comedy Macbeth, Sleep No More, Act 1 and 2, to give you an idea of like the author's writing style and his take on the play by William Shakespeare.
So like you said, Macbeth, right? Everybody, I feel like in high school, this is like required reading. Right. So everyone's at least familiar with the story of Macbeth. So where Macbeth, he ends up killing... This is not a spoiler alert, okay?
Yeah, this has been known for centuries.
Yeah. So Macbeth kills King Duncan, and then afterwards he's plagued with guilt and paranoia, right?
Yeah.
So this, the author writes where he's using that story, but he's also infusing his own artistic take in between like straight quotes from Macbeth. And I like that he kind of notes that at the beginning. He'll say like everything that's underlined is a direct quote from the book. So and then all the other stuff is just like how, like what he's trying to kind of guide us through.
Yeah, guide us in his take. Like he throws a lot of like satire, comedy, his own twist on the different characters.
Right.
Like Lady Macbeth, I don't know, just the way she talks is so different.
Yeah.
And she's more ambitious than Macbeth, and he's kind of like, I don't really want to do this, but I want to, make her happy and show her the man that I am, even though she ends up doing most of the work. And
isn't that the truth, ladies?
Yeah. So it's interesting. He throws, I guess you have to hear the music in your own mind because there's a lot of singing involved.
Oh, right. He writes a lot of the songs, like the lyrics and things that are kind of thrown throughout, which I honestly thought were really nice. There were some like romantic parts. There was some that was like funny and really heartfelt, and I loved it, and kind of dark.
Yeah, in some parts. Yeah, there was like a drinking song with the king.
I know, yeah.
There was like a love song between the young Chamberlain and this maid girl. And just between the father and son as well. And there was a few quotes that I thought were really hilarious. Like throughout the book, just reading it, I imagined myself being not at a theater, but just the theater was at my home.
Right.
Like it was more personal. I didn't have to pay all that money and be with all those people, but I got to envision... I guess that's part of the writing style. You could kind of visualize the stage, and there was this MMM, which was...
Ooh, the Magic Mind Monster, which I thought was super cool. And that's essentially, I guess, like his Macbeth's guilt kind of manifesting and creeping into his everyday life and almost manipulating him and all his surroundings and the people around him and, causing mayhem, basically. But what I also like too, though, going back to his writing style, I feel like a lot of the humor that's strewn throughout is kind of like him not taking, like this is like it's serious work, right? He put his time and effort into his writing, but he also doesn't take himself seriously, and you can tell that by his writing, by what happens with his characters and the things that he says, like some of the banter, right? Like there's some trash talk in there, and it's funny.
And the old man.
And some of it I feel like is a little out there, but kind of relatable as well.
Yeah, and back to this magic monster dude.
Yeah.
I also saw him as a MC because he would separate the scenes and
narrate and kind of help pull you through the story scene by scene and what's going on, who's in it, and
manipulate the characters, and he would kind of pause everything, talk to the audience directly, and then go back, like cut, like continue.
Yeah, it was like he was orchestrating everything, right?
Yeah, that's why I also saw it as like a personal play, happening in my living room.
Right.
So a few other characters. There's Duncan, of course, the king, which he was like the practical joker. He took his job seriously, but not really. He was there mainly for the perks, killing rebels, doing whatever he wanted, having parties, but he hated the paperwork. And there was like a pretty funny part about that section, having drinks, and then old Chamberlain, young Chamberlain, they were like his assistants. They made sure he was clean. They followed him everywhere, kind of like a personal chaperone, personal assistant. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And then we have the porter, which I thought he was funny. He's kind of like the doorman. Like, he takes care of the house and everything, and he's always so grumpy.
I know. How does he describe him? A crotchety old imp who plays the fool. He and Cecile are bitter enemies because of Dolores. I'm like, ooh, drama. Yeah. I love it. So, crotchety. That's a great word. I didn't think about that earlier. I was like, that's a great word.
Yeah. Yeah, OCH, that's the old Chamberlain. Because there's old and young, just because one's the father, one's the son. It kind of runs in the family, being like this assistant to the king.
Being crotchety? Just
being
kidding.
Crotchety and old and angry. The kid's depressed. He hates his job.
Right. Who doesn't?
Yeah. There's one section where this porter guy and this old Chamberlain, which used to be rivals for this one Dolores girl, like their love interest. So I'm just going to read it real quick. So starting with the old Chamberlain, and it's just going to go back and forth dialogue, which is what you get in the whole book.
Right.
So old Chamberlain, she never liked you. Hell, you were old and senile then. Who are you calling old? Me? Boy, you're so old you should sleep in a coffin. Oh yeah? You're so old you were the assistant doorman in the Garden of Eden. Why don't you just die so that I can be the ugliest man in the land? Right. You're already the oldest. Son, you got one thing in your favor. You don't look like your father. God is merciful.
Dang, mic drop.
Yeah, then he
Burned.
laughs.
He got burned.
Just walks away. And this kid never met his mom, so he's like, what's he talking about?
I know, he's
what's
like,
up
dang.
with these two old men? I think at one part he's even like, boy, if your dad wasn't in the picture, I would have been your father.
Ooh.
And I was just like, whoa.
That's some serious stuff right there. You don't mess with that. Ooh.
Yeah. So this is throughout the book, get a funny twist to everything, and there's like some intense scenes, right? Like when Lady Macbeth kills the king.
Oh yeah. So going back to like being detailed and stuff. So at the very beginning, when he's kind of setting the stage as to how the book ended, right? Macbeth, and like he kills him. Now they're basically framing someone for the death, right?
Yep.
The porter follows, and from a hidden position, he watches with indescribable fear as Lady Macbeth dips her hands in the dead king's blood, smears the drugged chamberlains with it, and places the bloody daggers near him. She was in a serious mood.
She didn't play.
No. If I saw blood, I would just be like, and freak out and run away. She's just smearing her hands all up in it. Mm-hmm. That takes some serious, guts right there.
And she only did it because Macbeth
right.
was too scared to do it, and he was just drunk, I think, before that even came up. Yeah. And before all this, this lady even goes and has drinks with the young Chamberlain and starts flirting with him and drinking some more, and they keep going to this, to that, cheers, to this, a toast.
Speaking of drunk, a part that I read that was funny and I just immediately thought of Abel. As they continue to sing, he signals for the kitchen maid to bring him the king's pitcher, an oversized mug by any standards. It resembles a small keg with a handle. It has Duncan's graffiti all over it. Badass, etc. It is filled to the brim with Warrior's Ale, a drink too strong for women and civilians. I was like, oh my god, that's Abel. I feel like he would have a cup that says badass on it. A huge one, okay? Be drinking his nasty beer and be like, oh, this is too strong for you little pretty dainty ladies.
Yeah, and they go on to sing like, oh, he's a jolly good fellow. They just get drunk and pass out. So this is pretty funny. Just random spots where they start singing and dancing, and then next scene is serious.
Right.
Then it cuts to talking smack to each other and being sarcastic. Back to Macbeth, and it jumps around, but it flows very well.
Right. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and be sure to check out Between Tomorrow and Yesterday, Tripping into Nowhere, Behind Nothing, by author Ivanye Yulisan.